Hey everybody, my name is Deja and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my anticipated releases for the first quarter of 2023. There are so many good releases coming out, and this list is pretty comprehensive of the genres that I am really into, so there's not much fantasy going on in this list, but I am not necessarily going to read every single book on these lists. This is just kind of like an overview of like what kind of has my interest peaked, and then I'll pick and choose from there. So this list is pretty long, even though it's just for the first 3 months, and I am going to be consulting with my computer to make sure that I get the details correct for you, and I'm going to try and do more like buzzwords and things like that, because I feel like going through all these different synopses full on can be a lot. So I'm definitely just going to try and like narrow it down to just a couple sentences. So of course we're going to start with January, and coming out on January 3rd I have Poison Roses, and I've never read the author duo that has written this book, but this is like the first book in a new quartet that they're going to put out, and I know they put out a lot of other stuff before, and this is like a rockstar mafia reverse harem romance. What I've noticed on this list is that rockstar romances seem very popular this year, and I think that has something to do with Jade's The Words, I believe, is a rockstar romance, and that was super popular last year, so I think that rockstar romances are going to pop up as more of a common thing throughout this year. But again, this is a rockstar mafia romance. So we follow this main character Billy, and Billy broke up with her first love, her first boyfriend, before she could really ruin his rock star career, because there was something that was going to ruin it. Now, present day, is broke, has nothing, and is being chased down by her second boyfriend. So she eventually gains protection by this band because they all hate her second boyfriend who is chasing her down. But the lead of the band actually happens to be her first boyfriend, who also hates her as well as her second boyfriend. So there's a lot of tension, and as I said, it's a reverse harem. And next up on the same date, we have Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert. I've read 3 Talia Hibbert books so far. One of them I hated, one of them I think is overrated, and the other one I thought was okay. It was pretty good. But this one I wanted to try out because it is a young adult romance, so one that's already something different. This one does also seem to be black love based off the cover. Talia Hibbert, in my experience, has only really written like biracial romances with a black woman and then the man being something else, normally white, but I love a black romance, so I'm hoping that this one is actually a black romance. So it being black romance and young adult automatically drew me to it, and I'm like, okay, let's give Talia one more chance. I have liked one of her books before, so she has that capability, so let's give her one more chance. And this one's also kind of a sports romance because the hero is a star football player and the heroine is actually like a social media influencer who has a lot to do with conspiracy theories and like UFOs and stuff like that, so that's really fun and interesting. They end up both being in this like survival course, obviously to like survive in the wilderness, and now they're like stuck in the wilderness, so it's kind of like forced proximity, and it seems actually really cute. So I'm hoping that I like this one. On the 3rd as well, we have Ghost 19 by Simone St. James. I've not read a Simone St. James yet, but I now own Sundown Motel, so I am hoping that I do like her work. I don't know if it's going to be for me, but this one is a short story, and I love short horror, so I may actually try this one first before I read the Sundown Motel, because it is so short. But if I don't like that one, I may still try this one out, because as I said, I do like horror and romance in a shorter form. And this takes place in 1959, and it takes place in a small town. This woman obviously moves to this small town and is obsessed with watching her neighbors' lives, but then she's also really stuck in this house and she's unsure why, if it's like a ghost or what, and there's also noises coming from her basement, and she eventually has to confront what is keeping her captive in this house because she also believes that a murder is going on. Then coming out on the 10th is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This one is the sequel to Ninth House, which I absolutely adore. It's a dark academia secret society series that takes place at Yale, and this is just a sequel that follows the subsequent events that follow the end of the last book. They definitely are related, so I'm really excited because I do love the first book. I definitely want to reread it because I read it like a while ago, I think before I started my channel, so I definitely want to try and reread it before I get into the second one. Next up on the 10th as well, I have Just the Nicest Couple by Mary Kubica. This one seems like a pretty average domestic thriller, but I've heard really good things about Mary Kubica and I want to try out some of her work. And this one says 2 couples, 2 close friends, 1 missing husband, and I feel like that's really all that you need to know. It just seems like a pretty average domestic thriller. The next one that comes out January 14th is How to Sell a Home Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. I love Grady Hendrix. I've read all of his work except for one book, and so I'm really excited to check out this next one, which actually takes place after COVID-19, and it definitely addresses the pandemic. And we follow two siblings, and they have kind of become estranged, but their parents died during the pandemic, and they both don't have really any money because of the pandemic, but they have this childhood home. So they are going to try and sell it and get it on the market as quick as possible. But before their parents died, they literally like started to do weird stuff to the house. And I think this is going to have commentary on like your parents, your past, and how that can impact you, and especially focusing on childhood. So I'm really interested to see how this one plays out. The next one that comes out January 19th is The Choice by Ashley Jade, or A Jade. And this one is another rockstar romance, but it says that it is a gritty, off-limits standalone romance about mistakes, choices, and love conquering all. This has one of those indie romance synopses that don't really give much away and are kind of like very like metaphorical. It talks a lot about the stars, and I believe this is kind of like a second chance romance based off what I read. But I'm kind of excited because I do really want to try A Jade / Ashley Jade's work, and this is the first book in a new duet they're putting out. Even though this one is considered a standalone, it's part of a new duet. Next one I'm really excited for. It comes out January 24th, and that is called Episode 13 by Craig dilouie. I read Stuff for the Children by Craig dilouie in summer of 2020, and I absolutely adore that book so much. It's literally chef's kiss. It's so good. And so this one seems so interesting too, like such a great premise. I'm gonna read the bolded part again because it's a really good summary. It says, a ghost hunting reality TV crew gains unprecedented access to an abandoned and supposedly haunted mansion, which promises a groundbreaking 13th episode. But as they uncover the secret history of the house, they learn that reality TV might be all too real. And this one is a horror and psychological suspense. And I know the two people who run the reality TV show are husband and wife, so that's also an interesting dynamic to have. But I love like a good found footage movie. I feel like this is going to be like found footage in a book, in a way. So I'm really excited for it. This next one also comes out January 24th, and it's All Hallows. And this one is compared to the 80s nostalgia of Stranger Things, so I'm really looking for that. I know that last year I read some books that had like 80s as a big point in the marketing, and it did not deliver the 80s vibes that I wanted it to. So I'm hoping this one actually delivers like the 80s like aesthetic nostalgia. This one does take place, I believe, in 84 in Massachusetts on Halloween night. It takes place in this one neighborhood, and these 4 kids show up, and they are kind of mixing in with the kids who are trick-or-treating. They kind of blend in even though they look a little odd, just because, you know, it's Halloween, and they are begging these children to help save them and protect them from the cunning man. But nobody really knows who the cunning man is, and weird things are starting to happen, like a new like field popping up, like a clearing, and a new tree that wasn't there before. So some weird things are starting to go down, but the neighborhood is kind of fracturing a lot, and there's also follows 2 families who are falling apart. And so you're questioning, how are they going to help save these children, but also who exactly is the cunning man? I'm always looking for a good like Halloween spooky read, and even though this one comes out in January, I still am excited to read it because it's 80s and Halloween together. Delicious. This next one also comes out the same day, and that's called Spice Road. It says, the first book in an epic fantasy series for fans of Sabaa Tahir, set in an Arabian-inspired land. And raised to protect her nation from the monsters lurking in the sand, 17-year-old Amani must fight to find her brother, whose betrayal is now their greatest threat. And it does list some other authors on here as well, but Sabaa Tahir is what really drew me to this, because I love An Ember in the Ashes. I don't really read fantasy, but I love An Ember in the Ashes. So this one kind of seems like it's very similar. Like, it follows a girl trying to save her brother. It's set in like an Arabian or like Middle Eastern inspired land, and it says that it's for fans of Sabaa Tahir. So I did throw one fantasy on this list, plus the cover is absolutely stunning, so I had to mention it. This next one comes out January 26th, and it's called Blood of My Monster, and it literally doesn't say anything. It says it's a new dark mafia romance, and it's the Russian mafia romance book 1. It's part of a trilogy, and it's not a standalone. I've read Rina before, and I really like her work, so I had to add this one on the list, even though I know nothing about it. And this last book comes out the same day, and it's called Wild, and this one is another rockstar romance. It doesn't really say anything again because of those indie romance synopses. I feel like sometimes they do get like this. I just know this is about a band, and it's a romance between like the lead of the band and also the daughter of the owner of the record label, so it's definitely kind of like a forbidden romance, but it seems like it's going to be a little bit more lighthearted based off the cover. And this author has written some other work that has been popular lately, like The Confidence of Wildflowers, I think is what it's called, and I haven't read that, but I've definitely seen them around, and this one again is another rockstar romance because they're really just popping up in 2023. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on to February. The first book that I have coming out February 2nd is Heartstopper Volume 5. I still have not read Volume 4. I did read 1 through 3 though, and this is the last and final installment in the series, so that's a little sad. This is just a cute queer romance, and I definitely want to finish off the series in 2023 because the graphic novels are so quick, so might as well just finish the last two. On the 7th, we have Secretly Yours by Tessa coming out, and so we follow our main character Haley, and ever since she was 14, she's had a crush on this guy named Julian because they almost kissed, and now it is years later, and she has been like commissioned to rework their garden because she's like a florist, like she works with like gardening and stuff like that. So she comes back in contact with Julian after years of being apart, but she slowly begins to realize that he's not the teenager that she once knew and fell for because he's now like a grumpy professor. One night she actually leaves a drunken note for him basically professing her love, but is anonymous. And Julian is on a sabbatical from being a professor at his Ivy League college to finish his novel, and he does not really like Haley because he's so grumpy and she's like a lot. She's very bubbly, kind of just a lot for him. He does not really like her, but he's kind of being drawn into her orbit, but also is kind of interested in this woman that left this letter for him. And so this seems really cute. I really am excited for this because I love Tessa Bailey, and one thing about Tessa is she knows how to do a grumpy sunshine. Okay, she did window shopping, phenomenal. It happened one summer, phenomenal. This one, it's gonna be another amazing grumpy sunshine from Tessa. She's gonna do it every single time. And you know what? Some people might call her repetitive. Some people might say that, no, she's overusing the trope a little bit. No, Tessa owns the trope. Tessa is the queen of the grumpy sunshine. So don't even do my girl Tessa now, okay? I'm excited. And so on February 14th, we have On the Savage Side, and it says 6 women, mothers, daughters, sisters gone missing. When the first is found floating dead in the river, it reveals the disturbing truth of a small Ohio town. Inspired by the unsolved murders of the Chickateeth Six, the harrowing and haunting novel tells the story of 2 sisters, both of whom could be the next victims. And this is the same author that wrote Betty. And I haven't read Betty, but I know Kat from Cat Chats loves it, and I recently did get it from Book of the Month. So I'm excited to try this one. It may seem like a thriller or a horror, but it is labeled as fiction and then mystery and then thriller. I'm going into it with the idea that it's more like a literary fiction that leans with a more mystery thriller element. I love like a good missing woman trope, and while the trope has always been around and it's always going to be around, I feel like it's starting to come back a little bit more, so I'm excited to see how this like literary thriller is gonna go. The next one also comes out February 14th and is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This one is a gothic fantasy, and it is very similar seeming to Mexican Gothic. It is about a bride and her husband. They kind of have like this whirlwind romance, but the one thing that she's always made the husband promise is that he will not ask about her past or try and dig into it or at all. But then her estranged aunt is dying, so they end up going to her house, and this house is starting to reveal secrets to the husband, including a mystery about the childhood friend that the wife had that went missing. And so it's kind of digging into her past, and it's comparing this to Mexican Gothic meets The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I haven't read Addie LaRue, but Mexican Gothic, I wasn't a fan of it, but that's more because of the horror end element. That didn't work for me, but I really liked the atmosphere and the original premise, so I'm hoping that this kind of gives that to me, but changes the story on its head, and it's going to give me more like a fantastical version than a horrific version, so I'm hoping that this one will work for me. This next one comes out February 21st, and that is The Writing Retreat. In this, we follow a woman who is a writer, and she's kind of down on her luck. She's about ready to give up on her dreams, but she's given the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to go to this writing retreat with this really famous feminist horror author, and turns out like her ex-best friend, who's now like her enemy, is going to be there because she's also a writer, but she's excited regardless. She's ready to go, and when she gets there, the horror author announces like, hey yo, so y'all are going to try and write a book in a month, and whoever writes the best one and wins the competition is going to get a 7-figure publishing deal. So she's like, okay girlie, you gotta write that book. So she starts trying to crack down and write this book, but the horror author is starting to act a little funky fresh, and her ex-best friend is kind of playing some mind games with her, and the mansion that they're at is also like a little weird. But then suddenly one of the other writers disappears during the snowstorm, and something sinister is afoot, so our main character is going to have to try and save herself. I love a snowy, claustrophobic like thriller, and I think this is going to give that to me. Like, I'm actually really excited for this one. Also on February 21st, we have Where Darkness Blooms. This one's giving like horrid slash burn our bodies down. I haven't read horrid, but like coverage is giving that, and this was definitely like an era, like in 2021 I would say, like this kind of like cover, and this kind of like YA horror, nature-y, very lyrical book was really popular back in 2021. And this one is a supernatural thriller. We follow basically a town, and this town has a lot of missing women. It's also known for this very like never-ending sunflower field. And so one night during a windstorm, these 3 girls disappear, but nobody's really surprised. We follow people kind of adjacent to them and also learn about their secrets, and it seems like it's going to be really good. Even though it is a supernatural thriller, that makes me a little nervous because supernatural, but I'm starting to open up to supernatural more, especially in 2022. So I'm hoping that this one is going to be a good one. And the next one comes out February 25th, and that is One Pucked Up Pack. And this one seems so fun because one thing about me is I ride or die for a hockey romance. Okay, hockey romances are my thing. I do love a football romance. I love a sports romance in general, but hockey romances are my favorite. This is an Omegaverse college hockey romance. I've never really read Omegaverse. I've definitely read like a couple like werewolf shifter books, but not really like Omegaverse related. This one will be my first real one that I probably complete. But the fact that it is a college hockey romance as well, I think this one's gonna be like the good place to start for the Omegaverse, because I love a good college hockey romance, and combine it with shifters / the Omegaverse, I think I'm gonna eat it up. Okay, I think it's really gonna deliver what needs to be delivered. And the last one that I have for February that comes out the 28th is The Neighbor Favor, and I've definitely seen this author write other books before, but they're normally young adults. But this one is adult, and our heroine is a really shy bookworm, and she kind of is almost like the black sheep of her family because they've always strived for black excellence. So I think that's going to be like an amazing theme to talk about in this book. But she really hasn't achieved that yet, and she's trying to, you know, figure out her life, and she really wants to be like an editor for children's books, but it hasn't worked out for her. But one day she starts like corresponding with one of her favorite fantasy authors, and they just kind of write back and forth because they're both a bit lonely. And months later, she is still really determined to take charge of her life, so she is looking for a date to her sister's wedding, and she's like, you know who could help me? My neighbor. And so she is really asking her new neighbor to help her find a date to the wedding, but it turns out he's actually the author that she has been messaging, and he actually does figure out that she is the woman that he has been emailing, but he doesn't really want to get in her way, so he does agree to set her up with somebody for the wedding. And it kind of hurts him because he actually has fallen in love with her over these emails, and it's kind of giving You Got Mail, which I love the You Got Mail trope, I'm sorry. And it's a black romance, which, you know, I'm gonna love every single time, so this one is going to be really good. The first book that I have in March comes out March 1st, and that is called Mothered. This is actually from the author that wrote Baby Teeth, and I've heard bad things about Baby Teeth, but this one has a really interesting premise, and I do own Baby Teeth. I haven't actually read it, but again, this one seems really interesting. This one is about a woman and her recently widowed mother asked to move in with her because, you know, she's widowed, and they really do have an estranged relationship, but she thinks to herself like, oh, this will give us a chance to bond and like rekindle, but also like she kind of needs help with her mortgage after the pandemic. So this is another one that addresses the pandemic. But as things go, they start to not really get along, and new things are starting to come up, old things are being resurfaced, and our main character also had a disabled twin sister that died when they were children, and that is also being brought up for her. But the mother actually accuses her of something really terrible, which basically sends her into a quest for revenge, which also sends her into a spiral of sleep deprivation madness, and it's combining a lot of things, but one true thing's at the center, and that is her mother. So this seems like it's going to be an interesting take on a mother-daughter relationship, and I do really like those type of themes in horror. What Have We Done by Alex Finlay comes out March 7th, and I read The Night Shift by Alex Finlay, and I did really like that one, but it promised 80s vibes and didn't deliver the 80s vibes, so that really disappointed me. But I kind of liked the writing and the premise, so I want to try out another one of Alex's work, even though it wasn't necessarily my favorite, but I did still have a good time. And in this one, we follow 3 people who were connected as teens because they were all in an abusive home for parentless teens, so basically like an orphanage. But this orphanage got shut down because a whole bunch of the children in the home started to go missing, and so they were split up, and now they are coming back together years later because someone is out to kill them. And so apparently it follows a stay-at-home mom with a past, a has-been rock star with a habit, and a reality TV producer with a debt. 3 lives, 1 deadly secret. And so This one seems like it's going to be really interesting. I did like how Alex Finlay did the POVs in The Night Shift. Even though some of them were my favorite, I still really liked how it was done, so I'm excited to try out another one. And coming out that same day is A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon. So in this one, we follow our heroine, and she is actually prophesized to be the most powerful witch in centuries, but she has more interest in baking than witchcraft. And one day her spell for summoning flour goes wrong, and she actually summons a demon. And this demon is known for bargaining for human souls and is seen as very ruthless and cutthroat, but he actually had a bargain that went wrong, so his reputation is not doing so well. But if he ended up getting our heroine's soul, his reputation would be saved. But he's actually forced to stay with her at all times until she goes through with the bargain, but she obviously refuses, so they're kind of stuck together in this forced proximity as like new roommates. And even though he wants to get her soul, he's actually kind of interested in her and finds her very beautiful. And if she does end up giving up her soul, she will basically be giving up all emotions and never be able to feel them again, including love. I've had to do a lot of voiceovers and editing lately, but here's another one because I actually forgot a book because this, for some reason on Goodreads, the date shows that it came out in 2022. So when I put my Goodreads shelf of anticipated releases in order of publication to film this video, it was all the way at the top, so I didn't see it. But I am really anticipating this book. It's one of the most anticipated releases that I have for this whole year, and that is The Trees Grew Because I Bled Here. And this is a new release from Eric LaRocca, and I love Eric LaRocca. They are one of my top favorite authors of all time, and I plan on reading every single thing that they have going forward because they deliver, and I say that every single time I talk about them in a video. And they do have another book coming out later in 2023 as well that I will talk about in my next anticipated releases video because it's in the second quarter of the year. And the next one comes out March 21st, and that is Lone Women by Victor Laval. I actually read The Ballad of Black Tom by this author and I liked it, and this one seems to be similar in a way because this one is about a woman who has this trunk, and that's similar to Ballad of Black Tom. There's a trunk involved in there. But in this, we follow a woman in 1914, and she has this trunk, and she carries it with her at all times, but she always keeps it closed because if she doesn't, people start to disappear around her. But she flees her home in California to go all the way to Montana to be a homestead because she's actually kind of involved in her family's death, so she's fleeing real hard. Of course, she's actually not alone, and she's desperately trying to keep locked up the only thing that's really trying to keep her alive. Next up on that same day, I have The London Seance Society, and this is written by Sarah Penner, who wrote The Last Apothecary, which I haven't read, but I do still have an extreme interest in because the premise is so amazing. But this one takes place in the 1870s. We follow two characters, and one of them is known to be like an acclaimed spiritualist who lives in Paris, and she does dark seances and is sought out by widowers and investigators alike. And our other main character is coming to Paris to basically meet with her to try and find out information about her sister's death, but the acclaimed spiritualist is actually called to England to help solve a murder, so she comes along with her as almost like a protege. But they actually team up with the men of London Seance Society to help try and solve this crime, but they slowly start to entangle themselves also in another crime. And the last one that I have comes out March 28th, and that is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. Now, me and T. Kingfisher, I don't know T's first name, but we're just gonna call her T. Me and T have a little bit of a rocky history. I read 2 of their books and did not like either of them, but I have hope. This is going to be my last, third, and final try. T, I need you to really pull through for me, okay? And so in this one, we follow our main character, and she has gone back to North Carolina to spend an extended time with her mother. She is really excited to like drink box wine and like watch shows with her mom, and she's just ready to have a good time. But her brother warns her that her mom seems a little different, but she kind of brushes it off. But then when she walks into the house, everything is very white, sterile. All the warmth that her mom used to have, that their home used to have, is gone. Her mom is super jumpy. She finds like a jar of teeth in the house. There's vultures circling in the yard, and everything just seems very wrong, and her mom seems scared. And our main character has to go digging through the past to try and figure out what is really wrong with her mom and what's changed. So those are all the books that I'm really excited for in the first quarter of the year. There's a lot of them, but it's mostly like thriller, horror, and romance, but I'm super excited for a lot of these. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video and found some anticipated releases for yourself, because I try to do a combination of like popular ones, but I really do go digging to also find some that aren't as hyped up yet or talked about. So if you made it to the end of this video, leave the little like hockey emoji down below because of that one book that's the hockey Megaverse book, because that one just seems so crazy, and I'm really excited for it. And as I said, that's all that I have for this video today, and I'll see y'all in my next one. Bye everybody.